This is disc number 13.
I blinked several times and rubbed my eyes lightly. Something was sticking to my lashes. I carefully peeled away a transparent green film which had slipped off each eye like a pair of contact lenses. Kishan appeared to be stuck in tiger form, and probably would be for a while, like Ren had been after Kishkinda. He blinked his eyes at me, and I could see the green film peeling away from one eye. "Hold very still, I've got to get this out or it'll bother you the whole way." I lifted the film off one eye, and then the other. It took a long time, but I was proud I could do it at all. The ocean teacher had said that as we exited Shangri-La, the scales would fall from our eyes, and we could see the real world again. I didn't expect his words would be this literal. I adjusted the backpack over my shoulders and began the steep descent back to Mr. Kadam's camp. The sun was shining, but it was still cold. I felt the same burning energy pushing me forward. I wouldn't stop to rest, though Kishan clearly wanted me to. I encouraged him to keep going and stopped only when it was too dark to see the landscape. Since Hugin had helped me get my thoughts unstuck, my mind had become limpid, clear. I calculated and devised a plan. I knew how to save Ren. The only thing I didn't know was where to find him. I hoped that Mr. Kadam would know something about the culture or the whereabouts of the people we had seen in the vision. The physical features I'd taken note of might not be enough for him to go on, but it was all we had. If anyone could figure out where to begin searching, it was Mr. Kadam. I also hoped that time had stood still or at least slowed while we were in Shangri-La. I was sure that Ren would be tormented every moment he was with Lokesh. It was unbearable thinking of him being in pain at all, let alone for the many days we'd spent in the world beyond the Spirit Gate. I lay awake in our tent that night for a long while, thinking about my strategy and analyzing it from as many angles as I could. I would not allow Lokesh to take anyone else. There would be no trades for Ren. We were going to save him, and all of us would be going home. The next morning, Kishan woke and changed to a man. I quickly had snow gear made for him, and he dressed in the tent while I got some breakfast together. He soon joined me dressed in his new clothes, a rust-colored base layer shirt that fit tightly under a black waterproof jacket, black pants with elastic cuffs, warm insulated gloves, thick wool socks, and snow boots. I appraised his appearance and congratulated myself on doing a good job. We discovered that recovering the scarf had given Kishan another 6 hours of freedom from his tiger self. We were now halfway finished with our quest. The tigers could take human form for 12 hours of the day. Though I was in a hurry, Kishan reminded me that it would take us at least 2 full days to hike down the mountain. When we made camp the second night, I decided it was time to talk to him about my rescue plan and show him what else the scarf could do. After we'd settled in our tent, conveniently made by the scarf, I unzipped my sleeping bag and spread it on the floor. I encouraged him to sit across from me before I picked up the scarf. Okay. The scarf can do several things. It can become or create anything made of fabric or natural fibers. It doesn't have to reabsorb what it creates. It can, but it can also leave the thing behind, and then the creation loses the magic of the cloth. The scarf can also be shaped to gather the winds, like in the story of the Japanese god Fujin's bag. The third thing it can be used for is changing appearance.
Changing appearance? What do you mean?
How do I describe it? Have you ever seen a magician pull a rabbit out of a hat or change a bird into a feather?
We did have magicians come to court occasionally. One of them changed a mouse to a dog?
Yes, it's similar to that. It's an illusion. A trick done with light and mirrors, sort of.
How does that work?
Remember the divine weaver said there was power in the weaving? It not only creates the clothes of that person, but it can make you look like him or her as well. The key is you have to be specific and capture in your mind exactly who you want to look like. I'm going to try it. Watch and tell me if it works. I said, "Disguise, please. Nilima." The scarf grew into a long piece of sparkly black fabric with colors swirling quickly through the entire piece. It glittered as if embellished with jeweled sequins that surfaced briefly and then disappeared. Light reflected and moved around the tent like thousands of prisms shooting rainbows in every direction. I wrapped the fabric around my body and covered my entire frame, including my hair and face. My skin became warm and tingly. The swirling colors were iridescent and lit the dark, small space in which I sat wrapped inside the warm blanket the scarf had become. It was like watching my own personal laser light show. When the glow diminished, I unwrapped myself and looked at Kishan. Well, his mouth opened in shock.
Kels,
Yep.
you even sound like Nilima. You're dressed like her.
I looked down and found I was wearing a powder blue silk dress that ended at my knees. My legs were bare. I just realized that. I'm freezing. Kishan wrapped his coat around me, then picked up my hand and examined it.
Your skin looks like hers. You even have her long painted nails. Unbelievable.
I shivered. Okay, demonstration done. I'm seriously freezing. I wrapped the fabric around me again and said, "Back to myself, please." The colors began swirling again, and after a long minute, I removed the material and returned to looking like myself. Now you try it, Kishan. I didn't have a mirror. I want to see how accurate it is.
Okay.
He took the scarf from me and said,
Disguise, Mr. Kadam.
He wrapped it around his entire body. When he took the fabric off a minute later, I found myself sitting across from Mr. Kadam. He looked exactly like I had last seen him. I stretched out a finger and touched his short beard. Wow, you really look like him. I felt the hem of his pants. The pants feel real. It's a perfect replica. He touched his face and rubbed a hand over his close-cropped hair. I said, "Wait a minute. You've even got his amulet on. Does it feel real?" He touched the amulet and felt the chain.
It looks real, but it's not.
What do you mean?
I wore an amulet for most of my life, and when I gave you mine to wear, I could feel its absence. This one doesn't feel real to me. It doesn't feel powerful. Also, it's lighter in weight and the surface is slightly different.
That's interesting. I don't know that I can really feel the power of mine yet. I reached over and touched the amulet around his neck, and then compared it to mine. I think the one you were wearing is made of some kind of fabric.
Really?
He rubbed it between his fingers.
You're right. The surface is slightly off. You really can't feel the amulet's power?
No.
Well, if you wore it for as many years as I did, you would feel it.
Maybe it's something only you tigers can feel because you're so closely associated with it.
Maybe. We'll have to ask Mr. Kadam about it.
Kishan changed back to himself.
So, what exactly is your plan, Kels?
Well, I haven't hammered out all the details yet, but I was thinking that maybe we could impersonate Lokesh's guards and sneak into wherever they're holding Ren.
You don't plan to make a trade, then? An amulet for Ren?
Not if we can avoid it. I'd like it to be a last resort. The big problem with the plan is that I don't know where Ren is being held. I told you I saw Ren in the vision, but I also saw a person that I'm really hoping Mr. Kadam can identify.
Identify how?
His hair and tattoos were unique. I've never seen them before.
It's a long shot, Kels. Identifying where the servant is from doesn't necessarily mean that that's where Lokesh is holding Ren.
I know, but it's all we have to go on.
Okay. So we have a how. We just need a where.
Right. The next day, we finally passed the snow line and continued moving quickly downhill. Kishan had slept as a tiger, so he walked with me as a man for most of the day, which gave us the opportunity to talk. He said that he felt stifled being forced back into the tiger form. Like Ren, now that he'd gotten a taste of being human, he craved it desperately. I tried to remind him that 12 hours was much better than 6. He could sleep as a tiger and spend most of his waking hours as a man now, but he still complained about it. During a lull in the conversation, I said, "Kishan?" He grunted as he slid downhill a bit on loose gravel.
Yeah?
I want you to tell me everything you know about Lokesh. Where did you meet him? What is he like? Tell me about his family, his wife, his background, all that stuff.
Okay. To start off, he didn't come from a royal bloodline.
What do you mean? I thought he was a king.
He was, but he didn't start off that way. The first time I met him, he was a royal advisor. He had moved up quickly to a position of authority. When the king died unexpectedly without any progeny, Lokesh stepped into the king's position.
Huh. Probably an interesting story there. I would love to hear the tale of his ascent to power. Did everyone just accept him as the new king? Were there any protests?
If there were, he quickly snuffed out any malcontents and went about building up a powerful army. That kingdom had always been very peaceful, and we'd never had a problem with them until Lokesh took power. Even then, he was always very careful around my family. Minor skirmishes broke out between our armies, which he always claimed he had no knowledge of. We now think that he was gathering intelligence, because the skirmishes always occurred in key military areas. He dismissed them as minor misunderstandings and assured us that he would reprimand the survivors.
Survivors? What do you mean?
The skirmishes often resulted in the deaths of his soldiers. He used his soldiers like disposable tools. He demanded their loyalty, and they gave it even to the point of death.
And nobody in your family ever suspected anything?
If anyone suspected him, it was Mr. Kadam. He was head of the military at the time, and he felt that there was more going on than soldiers misunderstanding their orders. Nobody else suspected Lokesh, though. Lokesh was very charming when he visited. He always assumed a humble demeanor around my father, but all the while he was coldly calculating our downfall.